Welcome to the Retirement Blueprint with the founder of 210 Financial, Phil Cooper, a program designed to empower you to live financially confident in retirement. From income planning and wealth management to healthcare, defending against taxes, and leaving a legacy. Phil shares the strategies and insights you need to help achieve retirement success. This is the Retirement Blueprint.
Welcome to the program today. I am Jen Rezac alongside the founder and CEO of 210 Financial, husband, father, proud grandfather, and my friend, Phil Cooper. Phil, how are you today?
Jen, I don't think I could be any better. I love the part about the proud grandfather. I jokingly tell my kids all the time that the day those little grandsons were born, I don't even know my kids' names anymore. It's all about the grandsons.
Should have had them first,
We
right?
should have, but thank you for the kind introduction. Yes, I am a proud father and grandfather and husband and the founder of this company, but most importantly, I really am. I'm the grandfather of my two little grandsons, and they have wrapped my heart completely. So thanks for bringing that up.
Oh my goodness. There's just something about the grandkids and the family dynamic, and just really speaks to the importance of you and your mission and everything that you do at 210 Financial. It really does.
Thank you.
Well, Phil, we have a great topic today. We're going to be talking a little bit about taxes, and this is actually an important one. There's been a lot of headlines. There's a lot going on. A lot of people don't realize that taxes could be one of their biggest expenses in retirement, right?
It could be one of the biggest expenses, but it's also one of the biggest unknowns, Jen. And that's the problem, is because who controls taxes? Well, it's not Jen and Phil, right? It's those powers that be that get to control things in our country. Sometimes we like to say it's without any representation from us. That's not true. We don't live in a taxation situation where it's without representation, but it sure has changed without Phil's opinion, I can tell you that. And it's never been in a position where I think it could rise any more than it is right now. So here we are. We have these dear folks who have worked their entire lives saving money into these buckets of investments we call buckets that have never been taxed. And the myth way back then was to put your dollars into this bucket, and then when you retire, you'll be in a lower tax bracket and it'll work out fine. And we're finding out that's probably not going to be the case. You're either going to be in the same bracket, if not even higher. And the problem with that is the one pulling the strings, the person that's getting to determine how much of the taxation gets to happen is not the client, it's the United States government. So I think we're in difficult times, but not without hope. We've got some tools and some strategies, but not without hope, for sure.
And it's easy to tune out some of this when things get a little hectic with some of the headlines and the politics. It can get kind of ugly. How much attention should retirement-minded people be paying when it comes to what's happening with Congress and the president and their ideas for taxes?
Priority number one. It ought to be priority number one, because all of the headlines of the news stations today, they're screaming tax the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich, and everybody, and I don't care how much money you have, most people say, well, that's not me. Well, it might be you, depending on what they are labeling as the rich. So I think people need to really pay attention right now, because it's not just so much tax the rich as far as the billionaires, the gazillionaires, right? These are dollars that are at the Main Street level that are going to have targets put on them. These are people's retirement dollars, and if it's not addressed right now, we believe this could be something that could derail someone's retirement. If not completely derail it, it will at least impact it greatly. And there needs to have some real priorities, real prioritizing of their time put towards this right now.
There could be a real impact there, and so it's really important that we understand that. Let's talk a little bit about how the average person could be impacted by taxes. As you're saying, a lot of times we say, oh, that's for those big corporations, that's for the rich, that's not for me. But let's talk about who it really could impact.
Absolutely. Anyone who owns these instruments, and they're very common instruments, Jen, someone who has something called a 401k or an IRA, or maybe if you're a school teacher, you had something called a TSA or a tax sheltered annuity. All that is, folks, that's money that's never yet been taxed. That's all that means. When you reach into that bucket, there's a partner standing there with their hand out, and that partner is the IRS. They want a piece of that right now, the IRS is being very, very generous. They want a small piece, but then they're also nice enough to tell us that that date of that small piece is probably going to be changing on January 1st of 2026, unless there's some kind of tax reform. We think that small piece that they want today, we think it gets to be a much greater piece simply because of the national debt. It's out of control. Social Security is broken. Medicare is broken. The infrastructure bill just got passed through. Social spending bills just got passed through. There's no money to pay for those things. So we think every time you reach into that bucket in the future, take dollars out for your own use, that tax person is going to want a bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger piece. And I think that's going to be something that nobody calculated way back when they were going to work and putting money into their 401k. That chunk is not all theirs. You do not own all of your 401k. You do not own all of your IRA. You have a partner in there, and right now your partner is being generous.
And that's a hard thing for people to hear. You look at that amount that you've saved in your 401k, you're proud of that amount that you've built up.
Absolutely.
And then we have to recognize that, as you said, we have a silent partner here. We have somebody else that we are liable to when it comes to where that money's going.
We do. And the other thing, too, there's a lot of folks that have been so blessed financially, Jen, that they probably aren't going to spend all this money. So their first line of defense is, well, I just won't pull it out of the bucket. I just won't pull it out of the bucket. I'll leave it alone. Okay, well, if you pass those dollars down now to your children, to your grandchildren, the tax burden is going to follow it. So we've got to have some plans in place. We have to have some strategies in place right now. We give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That's my famous saying. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's and not a doggone dime more. We want to pay our taxes. We want to be good Americans. But we want to do it at the most tax-efficient way possible, because you're not going to avoid taxes on that bucket of money.
No, you're not going to avoid those taxes, but we can be smart about it. And that's where the good news is. We are not totally at the mercy of all of this. There's a difference between tax planning and tax preparation, where we're looking through the rearview mirror and just saying, shoot, this is what I owe. We can be proactive here. So that's the bottom line. That's the positive message for all of our viewers today.
It is. And I think that you just brought up a great point. A tax preparer will look backwards, and they'll just say, well, this is what you did last year, this is what you owe, or this is what you're getting back. A tax planner looks into the future and says, if you do this, here's the strategies to apply. If you'll do this, we can reduce, or sometimes in some instances eliminate, the tax burden that you have on those dollars in the future. It's not about tax preparation from yesterday. This is about tax planning for tomorrows that are yet to come. That was a great point, Jen.
Well, it's just something that I think a lot of people don't realize. We might hear about a tax professional or a financial professional. We think they're all alike. But that's not necessarily the case, especially when we talk about things like retirement and saving our income from things like taxes in retirement.
Absolutely true. Yeah, could not have been stated better.
Well, I'm glad to be able to bring in a good point there. But yeah, there's just so much that we need to think about. There's so many different risks out there. Taxes is one of them, but there's all sorts of risks to our income. And that's really why you and your team, you spend so much time focusing just on retirement and these issues.
100% of our time. We tell folks, if you do not have a plan, you simply do not know where you're going. And part of the plan that we put together is the tax plan, to make sure that the dollars that are coming out of these buckets are coming out in a way that goes into your pocket as much as possible versus into the pocket of Uncle Sam. It's critical.
That's right. Taxes can be a huge risk in retirement. You don't want to pay more than your fair share. So reach out to Phil and the team at 210 Financial. The number is right there on your screen. We'll be back in just a moment.
Where would you go if you could go anywhere? What would you do if you could do anything? How would you fill your days? Who would you spend them with? When you retire, what will you explore? Let us show you how a complete retirement plan can open your world to endless possibilities. Explore your retirement. Eggs. For you, they never ended up in one basket. You saved, you invested, you diversified. Then, with the right help, you grew your nest egg and found the recipe for your ideal retirement. And when it all came together, you realized it was about more than just eggs. Write your retirement recipe today.
In everyone's life, there is a time to plant the seeds for a future in financial freedom. 210 Financial can help you harvest the fruits of your labor so you don't have to be worried about running out of money in retirement. Call 800-727-7754 for a complimentary retirement blueprint financial review. Again, that's 800-727-7754 or go to 210financial.com.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint with Phil Cooper.
Phil Cooper is the founder of 210 Financial. We're so glad you've joined us today for Retirement Blueprint. We're talking taxes today on the show and how to make sure you're not overpaying so you can keep more of your hard-earned money in your pocket. And that, Phil, is the key right there. We can build out that budget for retirement and all those fun things we want to do. But if we aren't careful about taxes, we're paying more of that to Uncle Sam and not the boat or the dream house or whatever it is we wanted.
Oh, Jen, that is so true. I can tell you from my decades of doing what I'm doing here, I will tell you this, that I ask people all the time how many dollars they have in a specific account. Maybe it's a 401k, maybe an IRA. I say, hey, Jen, how many dollars do you have in your IRA? And they'll give me an answer. I'm going to make up a number here, but let's say somebody tells me, well, I've got $100,000, Phil, in my 401k. Am I going to have enough to retire? And my response right then to them is, that's not all your money. And they go, well, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm married. That's half my money. I said, that's not what I mean. That is not at all what I mean.
But also true.
It is partially true. But what I'm saying is that $100,000, you have another partner in there that really has been silent. You mentioned that in segment 1. They've been kind of silent. But once you reach into your bucket, they're no longer going to be silent. Who is this partner we talking about? It's the IRS. And they get to determine. Here's the scary part. This is what we've got to get everybody thinking. The scary part is the partnership, the size of the partnership is determined by the IRS, not by the person who's worked and put money into that account. Doesn't seem fair to me, but that's where we're living. So what does that mean? You've got a $100,000 IRA. Some piece of your IRA is owned by the IRS. Now, the good news is, for the next several years, they want a little sliver of that. But if they ever decide later, Jen, they don't want a sliver, they want a chunk, they get to determine that. They get to say, it's chunkier. It's no longer sliver year, it's chunkier. And as Murphy's Law would have it, you guys know when this is going to take place. It's when you reach in, that's going to be the chunkier. So how do we fix those problems? We get ahead of those curves with the same group, the IRS group. They've given us tools to play within the rules of their own game, but reduce how many dollars they get to be a partner in. But when do we start doing this? We have to start yesterday. Well, yesterday's gone. So what's the next time to start? Right now. That whole bucket's not your bucket. If you're sitting here listening, you've got a 401k or an IRA, that's not your money. Part of it is, but you want to have a sliver year. You don't want to have a chunk year. So you need to sit down with myself and my team and figure out, hey, Phil, can I get a sliver year? How does this look? Don't let them take a chunk year. And we have tools and strategies to apply within the letter of the IRS law that they've given us, and it is so powerful.
Well, and we have to apologize for all these technical terms today.
The slivers
Things
and
like
chunks?
chunkier, right?
The sliver and
oh
chunkier.
Man, getting so technical here. Well, Phil, and I think this brings me back to something that we did touch on earlier, but just understanding the difference between being proactive, tax planning, and thinking about things like tax preparation. When do we get our taxes prepared? What do we think about? We think about that deadline in April. We think about things like deductions and credits and all those things, which are important to think about, but just a little bit different of a conversation than tax planning.
Absolutely. Most Americans, me included, when do we want our biggest savings? I want it right now. Save it for me right now. I cut a coupon, or I'll see an ad in the newspaper, or I'll get something on Facebook, and there's a sale going on at my favorite store down the road. So I look at saving that dollar right now. And as Americans, we're very good at that. We're very poor at saying, but what about 5 years from now? Am I going to have a problem 5 years from now? Could I save those dollars today? I gave this analogy actually to someone in our office just this morning, ironically. This young man is my son-in-law. He happens to be a farmer. And I said, would you rather pay taxes on the seed that you planted in the spring, or would you rather wait until that seed was planted, it germinated, it grew, it broke through the ground, and then it became a massive harvest in the fall? Which one of those you want to pay taxes on? That little tiny seed, or that huge bountiful harvest. He said, I'll pay taxes on the seed all day long. I said, that's what we're trying to get people to understand. I've got an IRA. That's my seed. I owe some money on that. Let's back to my illustration. Let's say I owe $100,000. I have $100,000. I owe some tax on that. But if I don't do something about it, and you have a really couple of good years, and that $100,000 is now going to be worth $200,000, how much of that $200,000 do you owe taxes on? 100% of it. I would rather pay taxes on $100,000 versus $200,000. So it's to say it's a farmer analogy. So the point of it is this, Jen. We are good Americans. A good American wants to save their bucks right now, forgetting the future. But that $100,000 growing into $200,000, or that $500,000 growing to $1 million, you could be setting yourself up for such a tax payday out here that it could just absolutely derail everything in your plan. So we want to talk to you right now before that time comes. That's tax planning, not tax preparing from last year.
We've got to be thinking ahead with these things.
do.
And of course, one of the challenges is the fact that that IRS code, that tax code, it keeps changing. And we keep hearing about different proposals to change things. What are some of the big changes, especially for retirement-minded people? What are some of the things that they need to have an eye on when it comes to saving some of their money from taxes?
Yeah, good point. One of them is legacy planning. So right now, this just changed in the last year or so. Used to be that if you left this earth, the Lord called you home and you left an IRA or a 401k behind, your heirs had their lifetime to pay those taxes. They could spread them out a long time. Government said, well, let's chop that down to just 10 years because they want those dollars and they want them right now because they're cash starved in Washington, D.C. It's not a secret of any kind. They're running in deficits there. So things like this. Another thing is if we're going to leave dollars to another generation, we have to get after this planning right now. If this is the bucket you're going to live on in retirement, these are grocery dollars we're going to have to turn into income, we need to get after this kind of planning right now. If you're going to do something to give some of that money away to charitable organizations, we need to do some of that planning right now. I think you're starting to pick up a common theme. When should we start this kind of planning? Right now, because that moving target of the government setting the rules, it's going to continue. It's absolutely going to continue to move on us everywhere. Some years will be great and some years will be horrible. Well, today it's very, very good. Now's the time we need to be plugging in and getting that plan in place for our clients.
That's right. Taxes could be one of those huge risks for you in retirement, and you don't want to pay more than your fair share. To Phil's point earlier, nobody's trying to get you totally out of this. Everybody knows that taxes are a part of our life as Americans, but we don't want to be overpaying, and that's the difference that we're talking about. Reach out to Phil and the team at 210 Financial for your tax analysis and your comprehensive plan for retirement. The numbers at the bottom of the screen. This is the Retirement Blueprint Show.
Where would you go if you could go anywhere? What would you do if you could do anything? How would you fill your days? Who would you spend them with? When you retire, what will you explore? Let us show you how a complete retirement plan can open your world to endless possibilities. Explore your retirement.
In everyone's life, there is a time to plant the seeds for a future in financial freedom. 210 Financial can help you harvest the fruits of your labor so you don't have to be worried about running out of money in retirement. Call 800-727-7754 for a complimentary Retirement Blueprint Financial Review. Again, that's 800-727-7754 or go to 210financial.com.
Hey everybody, it's Kendall, advisor and partner here at 210 Financial. This is Kendall's Corner. This is where we like to get tactical in the show. I know that Phil and Jen talked a lot about taxes today, and so I thought I'd take this time to kind of work on the whiteboard and help you all understand how to figure out what tax bracket you're in and then figure out what that means to you. So we got to keep it kind of general though. I'm sure everyone's tax situation is very much different. And of course, always talk to your own CPA or tax advisor or whatever it may be. But today, I'm just going to work with something simple. So let's talk about someone that is making $100,000 a year in income. That could be W-2 income. That could be pension income, anything like that. $100,000 in income And just since we're keeping it general today, we're going to use a standard deduction. I know that Phil and Jen talked about it a little bit today, but the Trump administration implemented what they call a standard deduction, and a lot of folks cannot itemize on their taxes anymore, meaning they can't take off the giving and the state and local taxes or the medical bills because it doesn't get above the standard deduction anymore. So in 2020, I'm going to use round numbers, it's not exact, but in 2020, for a married couple, the standard deduction is $25,000 a year. So when you're trying to figure out what tax bracket you are in, you take your income, and then assuming that you're only using the standard deduction, you take that off, which leaves you with $75,000 of income for the year. That is the amount of money that you're going to pay tax on in that given year if you were to make that $100,000. So then we got to decide how much do we have to pay in taxes on that. So the way that our tax system works is it's a progressive tax bracket. So from $0 of income to $20,000 of income, if you're married filing jointly, you're going to pay 10% in taxes. So that's about $2,000. Then from 20 to 80,000 in income, you're going to pay 12%. So I think that's about 6,800 or so. So since we only have $75,000 of income, you're going to pay the $2,000 plus the 6,800. That is $8,800 that you're going to pay in tax in 2021 if you made $100,000. So you're probably thinking, so what? Big deal. Sounds good, Kendall. That was pretty easy. But the question should be, what are you going to do with that information? So a lot of folks may think about doing a Roth conversion, or could they stack their charitable giving up in 2 years? So do your giving every other year and try to get above that standard deduction, or maybe a combination of the two. There's a lot of different tax strategies that maybe you could use to lower your income now, but really what you should be thinking about is the long run. What's your tax going to be like over your lifetime as opposed to just right now? So if you have more questions about that, go to the website on the screen below. Coming up next, Phil and Jen are going to recap the show today.
Eggs. For you, they never ended up in one basket. You saved, you invested, you diversified. Then, with the right help, you grew your nest egg and found the recipe for your ideal retirement. And when it all came together, you realized it was about more than just eggs. Write your retirement recipe today.
In everyone's life, there is a time to plant the seeds for a future in financial freedom. 210 Financial can help you harvest the fruits of your labor so you don't have to be worried about running out of money in retirement. Call 800-727-7754 for a complimentary retirement blueprint financial review. Again, that's 800-727-7754 or go to 210financial.com.
Where would you go if you could go anywhere? What would you do if you could do anything? How would you fill your days? Who would you spend them with? When you retire, what will you explore? Let us show you how a complete retirement plan can open your world to endless possibilities. Explore your retirement.
Welcome back to the Retirement Blueprint with Phil Cooper.
Well, Phil, we have talked a lot on the show today about taxes and how we don't want to forget that we have a silent partner when it comes to our retirement accounts. What would you say is the bottom line from today, Phil?
Yeah, I would think you've already hit the nail on the head, but let's talk about that silent partner. I want everyone to clearly understand that silent partner is being very generous right now and plans on doing so for the next couple of years. That doesn't mean you should not do anything for the next couple of years. Hear me clearly on this. We have some limitations placed around us by the IRS, but if we can take advantage of these limitations and put a plan in place for you and your family to get dollars removed from those buckets of money that have a partnership in them, called the IRS partnership, and place those into buckets that there are no partners in. It's all your money. How soon would you like to do that? And I think the answer for everybody ought to be, I want to do it right now while this partner is really generous, because I heard Phil say that whenever money leaves the bucket, my partner wants a piece of that. My partner today wants a sliver. Remember the sliver analogy? Yeah. Later they may want a chunk. I would rather pay a sliver versus a chunk. So when should we do this, Jen? Yesterday, right? And that's gone. So when's the next best time? Right now. That's an ever-moving target with the IRS, but they've given us some deadlines. They've given us some dates. We've got a couple of years left of this. I am of the opinion, very strong opinion, that anyone listening to the show, if you have a 401k or an IRA, it's worth a phone call to 210 Financial and ask us, do you think I ought to pay a sliver, or should I wait and try to pay the chunk later? And we will give you our analysis on that.
And it's just important that we recognize, I have read that with today's federal income tax rates, they could be the lowest that you'll see for the rest of your life, given all the discussions that are going on with raising those taxes. So as you said, Phil, to your point, the time to act is now, not 6 months from now or a year from now. We got to get on this.
Exactly right. Now let it be very clear that Jen and I are not policymakers. We don't set the tax law out there. However, the national debt is as high as it's ever been. Medicare, Social Security are as broke as they've ever been. The infrastructure bill just rolled out. These are trillions and trillions and trillions, not millions and billions, trillions with a T, that just keep getting put into the economy through the United States government. Somebody's going to have to pay for that. That somebody's right here, the United States taxpayer, and they're going to take those dollars from the places that they've already told us are coming from, and that's those IRA 401k dollars. And Jen's already made a very clear point. Let's get ahead of that curve. We're making this offer to anyone listening today. So Jen will give the number again here in just a moment, but the goal is to get started on this right now.
That's right. As we've said several times throughout the show today, this isn't about not paying taxes. This is about how you don't want to pay more than your fair share of taxes. We don't want you overpaying when it comes to taxes, your income taxes in your different retirement accounts. So please reach out to Phil and the team at 210 Financial for your tax analysis and your customized retirement blueprint financial review. The number is right there on your screen. Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a great discussion about taxes with Phil and the team from 210 Financial. One more time, that number right there on the bottom of your screen. We'll see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone. Look forward to seeing you next week.